When Rakim speaks, the hip-hop world listens. The God MC, the man who helped define lyrical mastery, has just dropped a bombshell. According to him, Kendrick Lamar's upcoming album won't just raise the bar. It will end the Drake era. For over a decade, Drake has dominated charts, streaming platforms, and pop culture, blending rap with melodies to become a global juggernaut. But Kendrick, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet of the streets, is ready to flip the game on its head. This isn't just about sales or streams, it's about reclaiming hip-hop's soul. The question is, can one album really shift the balance of power? Or is this just another chapter in rap's most heated rivalry? What Rakim reveals next will change how you see both artists and possibly the future of hip-hop itself. For the past 15 years, Drake and Kendrick Lamar have stood at the top of hip-hop's food chain, but they've climbed the mountain from completely different sides. Drake's rise was a calculated mix of accessibility and dominance. From his early So Far Gone days to global smash albums like Views and Scorpion, he became the poster boy for rap that blends sharp lyricism with catchy, melodic hooks. He didn't just make music for hip-hop heads. He made music for everyone, from clubgoers to radio stations to streaming playlists. Kendrick Lamar, on the other hand, built his kingdom differently. Emerging from Compton with razor-sharp storytelling and a deep sense of purpose, Kendrick wasn't chasing trends, he was challenging them. His 2012 masterpiece Good Kid, Mad City painted a cinematic portrait of his upbringing, balancing raw street narratives with universal themes of ambition, survival, and morality. Where Drake dominated with charisma and a constant stream of hits, Kendrick commanded respect with albums that felt like cultural events. For years, fans debated who truly reigned supreme. Drake's supporters pointed to chart positions, sales, and global influence. Kendrick's camp countered with critical acclaim, timeless albums, and his ability to address social and political issues without sacrificing artistry. The two rarely exchanged direct shots in the early years, but subtle jabs in interviews and lyrics began to fuel rumors of underlying tension. By the mid-2010s, that tension was impossible to ignore. Kendrick's verse on Big Sean's Control sent shockwaves through the industry, as he called out Drake by name, among other rap heavyweights. While Drake downplayed the mention in public, insiders knew it hit a nerve. From there, the Cold War between them became a game of chess. Calculated moves, subliminal analgesis, and strategic releases. Drake continued to flood the market, maintaining dominance in charts and streaming, while Kendrick took the opposite route, disappearing for years, then returning with meticulously crafted projects like To Pimp a Butterfly and DAMN. Each release sparked deep discussion, with fans dissecting lyrics, production choices, and hidden meanings. Kendrick's albums were studied like literature, Drake's were consumed like pop culture candy. Both powerful in their own ways. The rivalry reached a boiling point when the two finally began trading more overt shots in songs and live performances. Drake's sly bars about Pulitzer Prizes and conscious rap not moving units didn't go unnoticed. Kendrick responded with surgical precision, crafting verses that questioned Drake's authenticity and challenged his place in hip-hop history. The back and forth wasn't just about two artists. It became a referendum on the state of the genre itself. Enter Rakim, one of hip-hop's most respected pioneers. Known as the God MC, Rakim's word holds weight like few others in the game. When he speaks, it's not just opinion. It's gospel for many fans and artists. Rakim had been quietly observing the Drake vs. Kendrick saga for years, rarely commenting publicly. But when news broke that Kendrick's next album was in the works, Rakim finally decided to weigh in. In a recent conversation, Rakim reportedly hinted that this project could be more than just another Kendrick release. It could be a line in the sand, a moment that shifts the balance of power. His choice of words was loaded. This might end the Drake era. Coming from anyone else, it might sound like hype. Coming from Rakim, it sounded like prophecy. But what does that even mean? Can a single album dethrone an artist who has been the most commercially successful rapper of the streaming era? To answer that, you have to understand what Drake's era really is and why Kendrick might be the only one capable of closing the chapter. The Drake era is about omnipresence. It's about controlling the conversation, dominating radio, and maintaining a near-perfect hit-to-miss ratio. Drake mastered the art of staying relevant 365 days a year. Whether through solo projects, features, or social media presence, he's been the soundtrack to countless summers, heartbreaks, and viral TikTok dances. He's more than a rapper. He's a cultural brand. To end that era would require more than just great music. It would require a cultural shift, a moment where the collective focus of hip-hop turns away from commercial dominance and back toward something else. And that's where Kendrick comes in. Kendrick's approach to releasing music is the exact opposite of Drake's. He disappears for long stretches, creating scarcity and anticipation. When he drops, it's an event, not just an album. And his records don't just dominate release week, they linger, provoking conversation and inspiring think pieces for months or even years. Kendrick doesn't compete for the same space Drake occupies, he creates his own. But if his next project is as powerful as Rakim suggests, it could force the culture to recalibrate its values. Part 1 ends here, with the stage set. We have two titans with fundamentally different philosophies, a decade-long rivalry, and a hip-hop legend suggesting the next chapter could change everything. If you want, I can move straight into Part 2, 1200 words, where we break down Rakim's perspective, his history, and why his opinion matters so much in hip-hop. This will build credibility before we dive into the actual end of Drake-era theory. To understand the gravity of Rakim's statement about Kendrick Lamar's upcoming album, you first have to understand who Rakim is, and why his opinion still shakes the foundation of the culture. Even decades after his peak recording years, in the mid to late 1980s, Rakim, one half of the legendary duo Eric B. and Rakim, revolutionized rap lyricism. Before him, many MCs relied on simple rhyme patterns and predictable flows. Rakim's delivery was different: internal rhymes, multisyllabic schemes, complex metaphors, and a cool, laid-back cadence that made every bar feel deliberate and effortless. He didn't just rap over beats. He painted vivid pictures and shifted the standard for what lyricism could be. Albums like Paid in Full, 1987, and Follow the Leader, 1988, weren't just hits, they were blueprints. Rakim became the artist other rappers studied. His penmanship influenced everyone from Nas to Eminem to Kendrick Lamar himself. Many credit Rakim with elevating rap from party music into a respected art form, a transformation that made space for socially conscious, lyrically dense projects. So when Rakim, a man whose influence runs through generations of MCs, comments on the state of hip-hop, people listen. He isn't one to jump into beef for publicity, or to side with one artist for clout. In fact, throughout most of his career, he's remained relatively neutral in public rap feuds. That's what makes his recent comments so startling. Rakim has been watching the Drake versus Kendrick dynamic for years. He's seen how Drake's style has dominated airwaves, how his ability to merge rap and pop sensibilities created a hybrid genre that appeals to mass audiences. He's also seen Kendrick's calculated, deliberate approach, the way each Kendrick release feels like an essay, a thesis, or a manifesto, often accompanied by a deep conceptual framework. In an interview, Rakim reportedly broke down the essence of their differences. He described Drake as a master of the moment, someone who can sense what's trending, adapt instantly, and own the space before anyone else can move in. Kendrick, by contrast, is a master of the message, someone who might disappear for years but returns with a body of work that not only reflects the present, but often predicts the future. This observation isn't meant to diminish either artist's talents. In fact, Rakim has expressed respect for both. But the reason his statement about ending the Drake era hit so hard is because Rakim doesn't talk in absolutes unless he means it. He's not known for exaggeration. For him to even suggest that Kendrick's next album could mark a turning point means he sees something seismic on the horizon. What could that be? Rakim hinted at a few factors. First, the cultural climate. Hip-hop has always been cyclical. There was a time when party rap ruled the airwaves, only to be replaced by politically charged, socially aware rap in the late 80s and early 90s. Then came the flashy, materialistic bling era of the late 90s and early 2000s, followed by the mixtape and blog era of the late 2000s. Drake's rise coincided with the streaming era, where the ability to dominate playlists and maintain constant visibility became more important than long-form artistry. Rakim believes the culture may be ready for another shift, one that values depth over volume, substance over saturation. The success of albums like Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly, and even non-mainstream projects like J. Cole's 2014 Forest Hills Drive showed there's still an appetite for music that demands the listener's attention and engagement. If the audience is leaning back toward more thoughtful, socially resonant hip-hop, Kendrick is perfectly positioned to lead that charge. Second, Rakim pointed out that Drake's strategy, while incredibly successful, is also exhausting. Releasing music constantly keeps him relevant, but it also risks oversaturation. In the streaming era, listeners are quick to move on to the next big thing. The more music you release, the higher the risk that some of it will be forgettable. And in hip-hop, perception is everything. If fans begin to feel like Drake's music is formulaic or lacking evolution, that's the opening Kendrick could exploit. Third, Rakim understands the power of narrative. The Drake vs. Kendrick rivalry isn't just about music. It's about the story. In storytelling terms, Drake has been the reigning champion for years, the protagonist in the commercial success arc. But every great story has a twist. And audiences are conditioned to crave the moment when a challenger emerges to unseat the king. Kendrick, with years of critical acclaim and a reputation for delivering genre-defining projects, fits the role of the challenger perfectly. If his next album arrives with both artistic brilliance and sharp commentary aimed at Drake's dominance, the narrative could swing in his favor. And finally, there's Rakim's personal connection to Kendrick's artistry. Kendrick has openly cited Rakim as one of his greatest influences. You can hear Rakim's fingerprints in Kendrick's intricate rhyme schemes, his ability to shift flows mid-verse, and his attention to detail in storytelling. Rakim may see in Kendrick the continuation of a lineage, a passing of the torch from one god MC to another. If that's the case, his prediction about ending the Drake era isn't just about rivalry. It's about restoring a certain standard of micking to the forefront of the culture. Part 2 ends here with Rakim's credibility established and the foundation laid for why his statement resonates so deeply. Next, Part 3, 1200 words, will dive into what the Drake era actually means in cultural, commercial, and artistic terms and what it would take to end it. This will set the stage for how Kendrick's next album could make that happen. When people talk about the Drake era, they're not just talking about a rapper who makes hit songs. They're describing a cultural phenomenon that has lasted for over a decade, reshaping what hip-hop looks and sounds like in the mainstream. To understand why Rakim's statement about Kendrick ending this era is so bold, you have to first break down the DNA of Drake's reign. 1. The sound of an era. Drake didn't just rap, he blurred the lines between rap, R&B, pop, and dance. From Best I Ever Had to Hotline Bling to One Dance, he created music that could live in multiple spaces at once. His versatility meant that he wasn't boxed in by genre. He could drop a rap-heavy track like 5 a.m. in Toronto one week, and a club-friendly Afrobeats-influenced single like One Dance the next. This adaptability kept him relevant to different audiences. From hardcore hip-hop fans to casual pop listeners, this flexibility defined much of the 2010s. Labels and emerging artists studied the Drake formula: smooth melodic hooks, emotionally vulnerable verses, and a willingness to borrow from global sounds. This formula became so dominant that it influenced radio playlists, Spotify algorithms, and even the way younger artists approached songwriting. 2. Omnipresence and consistency. Perhaps the most defining trait of the Drake era is how omnipresent he's been. Since 2009, there hasn't been a year without significant Drake music. Whether it's a full album, an EP, or a feature, Drake mastered the art of never leaving the public conversation. In the streaming age, where attention spans are short, this relentless output kept him top of mind. Drake also developed a reputation for consistency. Even if critics debated the artistic depth of his music, it was hard to deny that he rarely missed commercially. A Drake release was almost guaranteed to dominate charts, shatter streaming records, and flood social media with memes, challenges, and reactions. 3. The image of accessibility. Drake's persona played a major role in the longevity of his era. He cultivated a relatable image, emotional, occasionally self-deprecating, yet confident. He could play the role of the heartbroken lover in one song and the ruthless competitor in another. This versatility in personality mirrored his versatility in sound, making him approachable to fans who might feel alienated by the harder edges of traditional rap. In many ways, Drake made rap safer for mainstream audiences. This isn't to say his music lacked authenticity, but rather that he mastered a balance between commercial appeal and lyrical skill that appealed to a wide demographic. 4. The business of dominance. Drake's reign wasn't just about music. It was about strategy. He and his team at OVO understood how to leverage streaming platforms early, release surprise projects to dominate news cycles, and maintain an air of unpredictability. His feature choices were calculated, aligning himself with rising stars to tap into their audiences, while also collaborating with established names to solidify his status. This business-savvy approach turned Drake into more than a rapper. he became a brand. His OVO label, annual OVO Fest, and business ventures further solidified his position as a mogul. 5. The criticism. But the Drake era hasn't been without criticism. Some argue that his chameleon-like adaptability comes at the cost of a consistent, artistic identity. Others accuse him of riding waves rather than creating them, jumping onto trending sounds instead of setting the pace. There have also been accusations of using ghostwriters, which, in hip-hop culture, can damage credibility, especially in the eyes of purists like Rakim. Another critique is oversaturation. By being constantly present, Drake risks making his releases feel less like events and more like routine drops. This is where Kendrick's approach differs drastically, and where the potential to end the Drake era comes into play. What would ending the Drake era mean? Ending the Drake era doesn't necessarily mean Drake disappears or stops being successful. Rather, it would mark a cultural shift where his style, dominance, and influence no longer define the mainstream hip-hop narrative. Instead of Drake setting the tone for the industry, another artist, in this case, Kendrick, would lead the conversation. It would mean a change in fan priorities, audiences valuing depth, complexity, and conceptual albums over playlist singles, a shift in industry trends, labels, and artists modeling themselves after Kendrick's artistry-first approach instead of Drake's quantity and consistency strategy, a redefinition of success, moving away from streaming numbers and chart positions as the primary metric, toward cultural impact and critical acclaim. Why Kendrick could pull it off? Kendrick has several advantages if he's aiming to change the landscape, scarcity, and anticipation. His long breaks between projects build hype that Drake's constant releases can't match. Critical dominance. Every Kendrick album so far has been a critical darling, earning not just rap fans but respect from the broader music world. Narrative alignment. The idea of a lyrical savior restoring hip-hop aligns with Kendrick's image and brand. Rakim's endorsement. Having the God MC himself publicly predict such a shift adds legitimacy and expectation. If Kendrick's next album delivers both musically and thematically, especially if it addresses Drake directly or indirectly, it could become a cultural milestone. Not just another great album, but the pivot point that redefines what the mainstream expects from hip-hop. Part 3 ends here. We now understand exactly what the Drake era is, why it's lasted so long, and the high bar Kendrick would need to clear to end it. Kendrick Lamar's ascent to the top of hip-hop didn't happen overnight. It was a steady climb marked by precision, purpose, and an unshakable belief in artistry over trend chasing. Unlike Drake, whose career exploded with instant mainstream success, Kendrick took the long road, building credibility in underground circles before commanding the global stage. Early days Section 80, and the arrival of a visionary. Kendrick's first major project, Section 80 2011, was a statement piece, released independently through Top Dog Entertainment. It was a conceptual deep dive into the lives and struggles of his generation. While it lacked the polish of later albums, it introduced the core traits that would define him: sharp storytelling, layered production, and a voice that balanced vulnerability with authority. In Section 80, Kendrick was already tackling systemic issues, racial inequality, poverty, addiction, with the insight of someone far beyond his years. He wasn't just rapping about his environment, he was dissecting it, holding it up to the light for analysis. This intellectual depth set him apart from the start Good Kid, M.A.A.D. City. The cinematic breakthrough when Good Kid, M.A.A.D. City, dropped in 2012. It wasn't just an album, it was a movie in audio form. The narrative followed a teenage Kendrick navigating the streets of Compton, caught between the pull of gang culture and the desire for a better life. Every song served as a scene, complete with skits, recurring motifs, and evolving tension. This was a sharp contrast to the singles-driven approach of much of mainstream rap at the time. Kendrick wasn't aiming for a quick hit, he was crafting a timeless story. The album's commercial success proved that you could still achieve massive sales without sacrificing depth. It set a precedent that an artist could be both critically adored and commercially viable, a combination that would become Kendrick's trademark. To Pimp a Butterfly, the radical statement. In 2015, Kendrick took his biggest creative leap yet with To Pimp a Butterfly. Jazz, funk, spoken word, and hip-hop fused into a politically charged masterpiece that tackled themes of racial identity, self-love, and systemic oppression. It was bold, experimental, and uncompromising. Critics hailed it as a generational work, while fans debated its dense layers of symbolism. Tracks like All Right became anthems for social justice movements, proving that music could still be a catalyst for cultural change. Commercially, it didn't match Drake's chart dominance, but culturally, it was untouchable, an instant classic in the vein of NASA's Illmatic or Public Enemies. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. Damn. Bridging the gap. Years later, Kendrick dropped Damn, a more accessible project without abandoning depth. Songs like Humble and DNA brought him his first Billboard Hot 100 #1 as a lead artist, while still offering introspective cuts like Fear and Duckworth. The album earned him the Pulitzer Prize for Music, a first for any hip-hop artist. This was an important moment. Kendrick proved he could dominate the charts and the critics' lists simultaneously. It put him in rare company, showing that commercial success didn't require creative compromise. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, the personal unraveling in 2022. Kendrick returned with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, his most personal and polarizing work yet. It was a therapy session in album form, tackling topics like generational trauma, infidelity, and personal accountability. While it didn't aim for Drake-style mass appeal, it deepened his artistic legacy. For some fans, this album was proof that Kendrick had fully embraced the role of hip-hop's truth-teller, unafraid to expose his flaws. For others, it was a challenging listen that required patience and emotional investment. Either way, it reaffirmed Kendrick's refusal to conform to industry expectations. Why Kendrick is uniquely positioned to challenge. Drake's scarcity creates hype. Kendrick's long gaps between albums turn each release into an event. In a market oversaturated with constant drops, his scarcity strategy builds anticipation to fever pitch. Cultural depth. Where Drake often reflects the moment, Kendrick shapes it. His work sparks think pieces, academic studies, and cultural discussions that extend far beyond the rap world. Critics and hip-hop purists trust Kendrick to deliver substance. This credibility means that when he takes aim at an opponent, directly or indirectly, it carries moral weight. Narrative momentum. Drake has been on top so long that fans are primed for a challenger's victory. In the public imagination, Kendrick is the only artist with both the lyrical skill and cultural cachet to dethrone him. Rakim's endorsement. Rakim's statement doesn't just boost hype, it frames Kendrick's next album as a historic moment. Fans will listen differently, searching for the album's potential to shift the culture. As we stand now, Kendrick's next move isn't just a release, it's a potential turning point. If the album blends the accessibility of Damn with the cultural firepower of To Pimp a Butterfly, it could not only dominate award season but also reshape what the industry chases next. Part 4 ends here with Kendrick perfectly positioned, historically and strategically, to make Rakim's prediction come true. If Rakim's prediction is going to come true, Kendrick Lamar's upcoming album can't just be good, it has to be a cultural earthquake. Ending the Drake era isn't about beating Drake in first-week sales or snagging a few awards. It's about shifting the center of gravity in hip-hop so dramatically that the industry stops orbiting around Drake's style, release strategy, and influence. Here's how it could happen. 1. A unified, high-impact concept. Kendrick's greatest strength has always been conceptual cohesion. Good Kid, Mad City, felt like a movie. To Pimp a Butterfly felt like a manifesto. For this album to make history, it will need a similarly tight, intentional structure, something that rewards deep listening and multiple interpretations. If the project arrives with a clear central theme, whether it's reclaiming hip-hop, authenticity, confronting the cost of fame, or exploring a new social frontier, it will naturally contrast with Drake's looser, playlist-ready albums. This conceptual weight could become the talking point that dominates media coverage, podcasts, and fan discussions. 2. Strategic but subtle shots at Drake. Direct beef tracks can be risky, but well-placed lyrical jabs can ignite the culture without turning the album into a diss tape. Kendrick has already shown he can dismantle opponents with surgical precision. Control vs. The Heart. Part 5. A few layered quotable bars aimed at Drake's commercial formula, lyrical authenticity, or oversaturation could light up social media and dominate hip-hop conversations for months. Fans and critics would dissect the meaning, creating viral moments that overshadow Drake's next moves. Point 3. Bridging accessibility and artistry. 1. Reason Damn was so successful was its balance. Radio hits like Humble sat comfortably alongside introspective tracks like Fear. For this album to challenge Drake's dominance, it needs both sides. Commercial hooks that can compete on the charts, dense layered tracks that critics and purists can hail as masterpieces. If Kendrick manages to deliver bangers that still fit the album's overarching message, he could simultaneously win the streaming game and the critical game, something Drake rarely does at the same scale. 4. Reinventing the sound. Every time hip-hop has shifted eras, a new sound has led the way. Think of Kanye's 808s and Heartbreak, which influenced a decade of melodic rap, or Travis Scott's atmospheric trap, which shaped the late 2010s. Kendrick could partner with unexpected producers or push into genres that Drake hasn't touched deeply yet. If he introduces a fresh sonic palette, something instantly recognizable but hard to imitate, he could set the production trends for the next 5 years. 5. The power of scarcity. Drake floods the market, Kendrick starves it. That difference alone is a weapon. If Kendrick drops a monumental album and then disappears again, it forces fans to sit with the music for longer. In an era of short attention spans, this kind of deliberate absence makes the work feel timeless and irreplaceable. By contrast, Drake's next release might feel like just another project in a long line of projects, a rhythm that could start working against him if audiences feel overfed. 6. Visual and cultural impact. Kendrick understands the power of visuals, from the All Right music video to the Heart Part 5's deepfake transformations. He uses imagery to amplify his message. If this new album arrives with groundbreaking visuals, cinematic videos, short films, or even an interactive digital experience, it could create cultural moments that Drake can't match with standard promotional methods. 7. Global versus local focus. Drake's strategy has been to pull sounds from all over the world, Afrobeats, UK drill, dancehall, and merge them into a global pop-rap hybrid. Kendrick, however, thrives on deep-rooted authenticity. If his next album narrows in on specific cultural or community narratives with precision, it could create a rawness and intimacy that cuts through the globalized soundscape. 8. Leveraging. Rakim's statement. Rakim's endorsement isn't just hype, it's a framing device. The media will run with the end of the Drake-era headline, fans will debate it, and critics will analyze it. Kendrick's team could lean into this narrative subtly, letting anticipation snowball without overtly promising a take. The mystique would make every lyric feel like part of a larger chess move. 9. Audience role in the shift. Even if Kendrick drops a masterpiece, the audience decides whether an era truly ends. Fans have to buy into the idea that this is a turning point. That means sharing and quoting lyrics that feel like generational statements, making the album's themes part of the cultural conversation, treating the release like a milestone rather than just another drop. If the audience responds with the same passion they had for To Pimp a Butterfly, dissecting every bar, flooding social media with theories, it could force the industry to pivot toward Kendrick's style. 10. Timing and momentum. If Kendrick releases his album during a lull in Drake's cycle, he can dominate the conversation unopposed. But even if Drake is active, a well-timed release, perhaps following a minor misstep or lukewarm reception to Drake's work, could magnify the contrast. In short, ending the Drake era would require Kendrick to do what he's always done, but at his absolute highest level, with a sharper edge aimed at the reigning champion. If he pulls it off, the industry could enter a new phase where quality and cultural depth set the standard. Again. Part 5 ends here, with the strategy laid out. If Kendrick Lamar's next album truly ends what's widely called the Drake era, it wouldn't just be a personal victory, it would be a cultural pivot. Hip-hop's direction, priorities, and power centers would shift, and the ripple effects would be felt across the music industry for years. Let's break down what this hypothetical post-Drake era might look like. 1. A shift back to lyricism and storytelling. Drake's reign has been marked by melody-driven rap, crossover hits, and heavy reliance on vibes over dense lyrical content. If Kendrick takes the crown, the pendulum could swing back toward intricate bars, layered storytelling, and socially conscious themes. New artists might start focusing less on creating TikTok-friendly snippets and more on building cohesive, meaningful projects, because the new gold standard would be Kendrick's approach. 2. Decline of the streaming-first formula. Drake is arguably the master of streaming-era tactics. Long albums to boost total plays, frequent releases to stay in the algorithm, and genre hopping to capture every possible audience. If Kendrick's scarcity-based, high-impact approach proves more powerful, we could see a slowdown in the industry's content churn. Labels might realize that waiting for a cultural moment can be more valuable than flooding the market. 3. Drake's response and reinvention. Drake wouldn't disappear, he's too versatile and too embedded in pop culture. But a cultural dethroning could push him to reinvent himself, perhaps going more personal, more raw, or even more experimental than ever before. He could pivot toward a legacy phase, chasing critical acclaim rather than pure chart dominance, which would be fascinating to watch. 4. Rise of a new conscious wave. If Kendrick becomes the unchallenged cultural leader, other artists in his lane, J. Cole, Nanim, Denzel Curry, Little Sims, might gain more mainstream visibility. Conscious, conceptual rap could start trending again, not just in underground circles, but at award shows and on global playlists. 5. The return of the album as an event. One of Drake's greatest achievements has been normalizing the streaming drop, albums arriving with little warning, meant to be consumed quickly and replaced by the next. Kendrick's method, on the other hand, treats albums as cultural events. If his next release redefines the moment, artists might start returning to elaborate rollout strategies, teaser singles with layered meaning, cinematic visuals, deep fan engagement before release day. 6. Hip-hop's gatekeepers reorient media outlets. Award bodies and festival bookers tend to follow the cultural leader. A Kendrick-led era might see the Grammys, Rolling Stone, and other institutions prioritizing artistic innovation and lyrical excellence over streaming numbers. In this world, up-and-coming rappers who want to make it might be less focused on algorithms and more focused on pen game. 7. Regional sound resurgence. Drake's globalist approach to sound blending Afrobeat, UK drill, dancehall and trap has created a borderless hip-hop culture, but Kendrick's music is deeply tied to West Coast identity and storytelling. If his style takes over, we could see a return to stronger regional identities. Atlanta trap pushing boundaries again, New York drill refining its storytelling, West Coast hip-hop reasserting its influence. 8. Social commentary at the forefront. Drake is a cultural mirror. He reflects trends, moods, and aesthetics. Kendrick is more of a cultural commentator. He dissects, critiques, and challenges. If his voice becomes the dominant one, hip-hop could start taking on a more activist role again, addressing inequality, mental health, politics, and systemic issues with more regularity. 9. Audience expectation reset. Fans, who've grown accustomed to casual, playlist-ready albums might at first feel overwhelmed by denser, concept-heavy releases. But as with To Pimp a Butterfly, those same albums could become slow-burn classics. Over time, the audience might start demanding more depth from everyone, not just Kendrick. 10. Legacy cementation for Kendrick. Ending the Drake era would cement him not just as one of the greatest rappers alive, but as one of the most influential, cultural figures in music history. His name would be mentioned alongside Rakim, Tupac, Nas, and Jay-Z as an artist who didn't just succeed in the game, he changed the rules. For Drake, it would mark the close of a historic run, but not a fall from grace. He'd remain a legend, just in a different role. No longer the primary cultural driver. Final scene. The symbolic passing of the torch. Picture it. Kendrick Lamar wins Album of the Year at the Grammys. As he gives his speech, he thanks his influences, including Rakim, and nods respectfully toward Drake, acknowledging his impact on the culture. The crowd knows it's more than just an award moment, it's the formal recognition of a shift, the kind Rakim predicted. Whether the Drake era truly ends or simply evolves, one thing would be certain: hip-hop would never look quite the same again. Hip-hop is at a crossroads, and we might be witnessing the moment history changes. Rakim's bold prediction isn't just hype. It's a challenge to the culture, to the artists, and to us as fans. When Kendrick Lamar drops, it won't just be another album, it could be the start of a new era. But what do you think? Can one project truly end the reign of an artist who's dominated for over a decade? Or will Drake respond with something that flips the script again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with a friend who lives for rap debates. And make sure you're subscribed, because when Kendrick's next album hits, we'll be breaking it down track by track, bar by bar. The game is changing, and you don't want to miss it.